investigation. You hear that, Cash Patel? Did you hear that? Webb says that there's a 7.5 hour gap that needs investigation. Just letting you know. Okay. You know, or don't. I'm sure the Dow is over 50,000, so I think it should be fine then.
Hello, friends, and happy Monday. Boy, do I have a show for you guys today. Huge shout out to Ian Carroll for his Webb. Oh my goodness, you guys. I cannot thank him enough for this. Not only do I feel vindicated in my previous findings in the files, but I was able to find the information and save that information a lot easier. Guys, the amount of tabs I had to have open going through the files was criminal. And the amount of sleep I was losing trying to sift through the files was insane. Let's just say my computer was putting in some serious overtime. All right, without any further ado, let's get started. Guys, let's head right into the juicy stuff right away. I'm not going to make you wait for it. We're going to start with Miss T and her very strange, inconsistent border crossings in relation to her statement that she made to the FBI.
And if we remember from the previous episodes, she had never met Epstein prior to working at the prison. Okay. I don't believe that, and I'm going to tell you why. Okay. So, as we know, she told the investigators that she first came here in 2002 when she was 13, right? Well, that's not true, actually, because when we look at the U.S. Customs and Border Protection here, and we have her name right here, one of many, by the way. She has multiple aliases, which is also another red flag for me. Why do you have so many different? You haven't even been in America that long to have as many names as she has. Truthfully, it's wild. But anyway, look at this encounter date. So this is the day that it happened. 8/25/1995. Which, if I did my math correctly, and I could be wrong, but if she was 13 in 2002, wouldn't that make her like around 6 in 95? So the whole, oh, I came here when I was 13. Yeah, and maybe she meant like, oh, I just didn't move there till I was 13. But still, it's like if you were here already, why would your mom leave you back in Antigua just to have you come back when you're 13? Like, none of it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. Or probably anybody with a normal IQ level above 12. The reason why people lie is because they're hiding something. Okay, there would be no reason to lie if you weren't hiding something. If you didn't have anything to hide, what's the point of lying? Especially in a very serious situation like that. A prisoner died under your watch that you supposedly weren't paying attention to. You would think that you would be very forthcoming. You would think that you would be taking it very seriously. But instead, you're lying. And what's even more compelling is the fact that the feds clearly had this information. If I can find it, obviously they found it. As a matter of fact, I only found it because they found it. We have the files because they released them. So you found that she actually was here in 1995 and not 2002, or at least I hope you did. I hope that I'm not doing a better job at investigating this than our FBI. I really hope. Because if that's the case, then we're doomed. Like if I am doing a better job as an average everyday American citizen at investigating cases like this than the FBI, then we have a serious problem on our hands, folks. And I truly do mean that from the bottom of my heart. We have a very serious problem. So, with that being said, I just want to say it's compelling to me that the FBI has this information and has not disclosed that to the public. If anything, the media is trying to paint Tova as some scapegoat that was not involved in any way at all with Epstein, which very well may be true. But given the evidence that we're looking at here, it could also be true that she was working with Epstein. So, without a thorough investigation, I can't say for sure what her role truly was. But let's keep looking into this, because if you notice here, the I here stands for inbound. So it's, if there's an O, it means that she was leaving. If she's coming, it's an I, okay? So we have in 1995, when she was a little girl, she came here. Where have we heard that before? Plenty of times. Okay? She gets in here. Oh, and look at that. The inspector, look, notice how all of these ins and out times all have, all of them except for this one and this one. For some strange reason, there's no inspector name, and the time is always 0000. Whenever there's no name, and there's no time. You see what I'm saying? That's a common theme here. Starting to notice. Apparently, all the way back in the 90s, this must be a game plan that they've been using for a while. No name, no time, no cameras, no nothing. Nothing. Weird. Anyway, so all of these say not referred because she was not referred to getting a second look or a second check. Like if you end up getting referred, apparently they take you and they do like another check to make sure that things are credible. And she never got referred. They just always let her through with no problems. So so she came in, and here's what's weird. The next recorded border crossing, and I say recorded because obviously she got out of here somehow in order to be able to enter back in, because the next recorded date and time is in 2002. And it's recorded that she's coming back in. But if you notice down here, she was already in. So how could she come back in when she was already in? How did she get out? And why isn't it documented by Border Patrol? No, I'm not saying they can't drop the ball, because we know that they can. And maybe just didn't report her leaving, but it is also possible that she took a private plane that went unchecked back to Antigua. It is not uncommon for Jeffrey, as we've looked into the emails, to go back and forth to Antigua. It is an hour flight from his island. It is an hour flight. So, yeah. Anyway. So the next one is her coming back in then, and then she leaves. So she's here on July 4th of 2002, and then about 4 years later, they have her leaving again. And then that same year, about almost a month later, she's coming back in. And then look at this again. We have, and this is what's interesting to me, because as she's leaving this time, so there's this month period in 2006 where she's leaving, and she comes back a month later, but the person who's having her leave, again, no name, no time. There's no information. You don't even know what site she left from. Here it tells you what site whether she's at like the Miami port, or she's at Puerto Rico or New York. It's usually documented right here. But all of these ones, they don't want to tell you the site that she's coming in and out of. I find that to be a little strange. And of course, there's always no name attached, and there's also no time every time. So anyway, she comes back in about a month later, and then again, another month later in September. So we have July, August, and September of 2006. She left in August, or in July. She comes back in August. And then look at that. There's no outgoing flight again. You just see her coming back in September. So you're going on a month's long vacation once a month, every month. In what world? Like, what is going on? And yeah, I know at one point she was in the military, and that could have something to do with it for sure. But it's just strange. I could spend an hour talking about these flights, truly. Like, there is enough information here to go in depth. But really, the only one that is the most compelling for me is this one right here. So in 2007, if you notice here, if you notice here in this category where it says AA, OW, CA, these are all the different airlines that she was using. So AA stands for American Airlines, for example, and OW is some type of Caribbean airline. Okay. Antigua is in the Caribbean, so that would make sense. But this one stood out to me because it's the only one that just says 9K. And I'm like, what airline is 9K? Okay. And then I put in the site number and everything. This one actually has a person, which I was shocked, considering where this plane is going or coming into. So it's just interesting to me. But here, let's start at the beginning. She leaves, and this again, we don't know where she's leaving from. We don't know who let her go. She's on American Airlines, and of course, again, guess what? No time. Surprise. And so she leaves, and this is, I mean, let's just, if we just assume that it's actually at midnight here. This 9K, I put it into ChatGPT, and let's see what it says. Okay, so I said instead of AA, it says 9K. And it says that this carrier code is the airline code for Cape Air. So it says that Cape Air is a regional airline that operates short distance flights, Caribbean routes, US domestic island routes, and small aircraft, usually 9-passenger plane. So it operates in small distance routes. Well, that's interesting. So I asked, how long does it take to fly from Antigua to the Virgin Islands? And ChatGPT said that if you are leaving from the Virgin Islands to Antigua or vice versa, it's about an hour and 30 minutes at most. If you were leaving from other places like Chicago, Boston, Los Angeles, it would be like 4 hours. But if you're leaving from just from the Virgin Islands to the Virgin Islands, or the Virgin Islands to Antigua, it would be about an hour and a half. So these planes are known for going short distances. So I would assume then that it wasn't one of these. She probably would have taken an American Airlines if that was the case, because she has in the past. In this case, she took a plane that was smaller and going for a shorter distance. And it came into the Virgin Islands. And I know that because when you look up the site number here, which is A745, I looked that up on ChatGPT. So I put the site number. It says the site says A745. Yep, A745. And it pulls up in this context, it corresponds to St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, which would make sense considering the type of plane that she was on and the site destination. So she went from Antigua to the Virgin Islands. You know who else was on the Virgin Islands? Mr. E. Yeah. Now, is it possible that she went on a vacation and to the Virgin Islands? Yeah, maybe. I doubt it. Highly, very much doubt it. Yes. It just doesn't. It just, when we talk about the whole puzzle and who we're talking about, what they're known for, what they're capable of, and then we talk about where she comes from, her storyline, her timeline. It fits exactly the same profile and narrative and context as every other trafficked individual or someone who was working for him or with him, a part of his network, whether by force or otherwise. It fits it to a T. Okay. So, and that's it. The inbound and outbound is important here to remember, because here's the thing. The Virgin Islands is the United States. So she left the United States earlier that morning, supposedly at midnight. Okay. So on January 13th, 2011, she left, supposedly at midnight. And then all of a sudden she's coming back in to the America at the U.S. Virgin Islands at 9 in the morning. So there's a 9-hour period. Now to get from, so she took American Airlines to Antigua. I believe that's about a 5-hour flight. Let me double check here. I don't want to tell you guys anything that isn't correct. So let's see. Yeah, how long does it take to fly from America to Antigua? And it looks like at most, I mean, at the least, it could take 3 hours to 15 minutes. I'm not able to determine where exactly she departed from because, of course, they didn't put a site number. So one can only speculate here. But the least amount of time if she left from Miami would be 3 hours and 15 minutes. If she left from New York, which is highly possible considering that's where she was staying, would have been 4 hours and 15 minutes. Well, the Virgin Islands is only an hour and a half at most from Antigua. So it is highly possible that she left at midnight, got to Antigua 4 hours later, which would make it 4 in the morning, did whatever business she had to do in Antigua, and then flew an hour to the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now you might ask, why would she go to Antigua and then go to the U.S. Virgin Islands? Well, if you look through the emails, Mr. E had a lot of dealings in Antigua. A lot. And also in Beijing, where she said she was right before when she was the last place that she traveled. She went there supposedly on vacation.
Okay, friends, let's jump right into our next topic here. We're going to talk about our friends over at the Medical Examiner Center in New York, friends of the show, of course. They have huge inconsistent timeline gaps going on here. So let's dive right into that.
All right. So based on the documents, I can establish several direct connections that support your investigation into potential patterns. Direct connection, Epstein's autopsy. The documents show Dr. Jason Graham was directly involved in Jeffrey Epstein's death investigation. See what I'm saying? The documents do show that. His official death certificate doesn't show that. But when you look through all of the files, yeah, it's weird. Like, why are you not listed officially if you're that involved? Whatever. So according to an email from August 10th, through the 11th of 2019, Graham was the contact person at the office of the chief medical examiner who coordinated the autopsy delay to allow Dr. Michael Baden, sorry, I think it's Baden, to be present. The email states, moments ago, I spoke with an individual at the office of the chief medical examiner, Dr. Jason Graham. He said his office was in touch with the family today. They are prepared to delay tomorrow the autopsy. Okay, we went over all that in a previous episode. If you want to see those emails, I have them up on my, I'll link the video below. So you can go take a look at that if you want to see them. Dr. Graham's official role. Dr. Jason K. Graham is identified as the first deputy chief medical examiner who reviewed Epstein's, oh, dang it, I said it. Hopefully they don't not push this video. Man, okay. Actually, I'm not gonna lie, guys, like this is really annoying. I heard another YouTuber, I can't remember if it was Jesse on Fire or who it was. I think it was him, but it's just like it is very, very annoying to have to be so mindful. Like I can't just say what it is. It's very annoying. Anyway, Mr. E's autopsy report. The autopsy report from August 27, 2019 explicitly states this report is reviewed by Dr. Jason K. Graham, first deputy chief medical examiner. Again, I showed all this in my previous video, so go take a look. Dr. Michael Baden's involvement. Dr. Michael Baden was hired by Mr. E's family to observe the autopsy, as confirmed in the Traverse graph results showing Baden was hired by Epstein's family. Baden later publicly suggested Epstein's death was a homicide due to neck injuries inconsistent with suicide. So in my previous episode, I talked about how Michael Baden, if you're unaware, he's actually always involved in very controversial cases. He was involved in the George Floyd case. He was actually also involved in the O.J. Simpson case. And it seems as though he is almost always involved in the opposition, like the opposing side of whatever the narrative is. So there's always two narratives, right? We have left and right, Republican and Democrat. Whatever side, there's always a side. It always happens. And then there's always a political narrative. Like, for example, let's use George Floyd because that's one of the more recent ones as an example here. So it's kind of still fresh on the brain for everybody. It was controversial. It was controversial because you have a white officer and a Black male who are now interacting with each other. Okay, we have the store clerk or I don't know, store. There's a corner store or something like that, convenience store. They called and said that he was trying to pay for his stuff, his groceries or whatever with a counterfeit bill, $20 bill. Okay, police show up. There is confrontation. There's I don't know. I think I saw them try to get him into the squad car and then he wouldn't. And then he got out of the squad car. He was handcuffed. His hands were behind his back. Police officer Derek Chauvin did have his, as he's handcuffed with his hands behind his back, he was face down. Derek Chauvin is arresting him. He's got his knee on the back of his neck area and the back of his back area. Very controversial as to what exactly happened there. Very controversial. There you have one side saying that it's very clearly suffocation. Okay, you have George Floyd telling him, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. You have people recording, there was a fireman there. He was not on duty at the time, but he was saying that, he was trying to tell the officers, like, he can't breathe, get off of him. EMS is being called. And then slowly but surely you start to see George Floyd, he stops speaking, and things start to take a turn for the worst. And next thing you know, he's being rushed to the hospital in EMS. And then we find out later on that he did not make it, unfortunately. And it is a very sad thing to watch. It is a very sad thing to even talk about. And I really do not like bringing it up because it is a cruel thing. And here's the thing. I'm not saying that it is cruel because it's controversial. Well, actually, yeah. I mean, just making a controversy out of someone's death is actually cruel. Actually, I take that back. I think that's cruel. Not everything has to be political. Not everything has to be an argument. Sometimes what's right is and what's wrong is wrong. However, as we've seen even in more recent events, it seems as though the media really tries to gaslight you into thinking that your own eyes are deceiving you as to what is right and what is wrong. And if you question yourself when you see something and your gut feeling goes, that doesn't feel right, or that looks horrible, and that's your first thought. If something looks horrible, it is horrible. Okay? Don't wait until you turn on the news later and they're like, well, actually, he had this many drugs in his system, and actually, she was trying to run him over. Oh, well, actually, like, no. We have eyeballs. Okay, we can see the video, we've seen what happened. We know what happened. Okay. Now, it ended up being in George Floyd's case, it actually ended up being very controversial because yes, he did have they found in the autopsy that they found drugs in his system, and they were saying that it was due to that. But then they reviewed the toxicology report again and determined that the amount of whatever he had in his system was actually really low in comparison to what would actually um kills somebody like him, because apparently I guess he had like a tolerance. Again, I'm not an expert on the case, and that's not really the point I'm trying to make here. The point I'm trying to make is that he seems to somehow always end up in a case that is very political. It's very politically charged. It's very a lot of times it's racially charged. Um and it's very emotionally charged. So it's you where you have two sides that are feel so strongly one way or another, and both sides usually are feeling very strongly one way or another is because there's a narrative being pushed on each side. One side's being told one thing, the other side's being told another thing. Okay, so then you have the medical examiner over here who's going to tell you one thing, and then you have the independent medical examiner or independent autopsier who's going to go ahead and then tell this side another thing. And what I've noticed in a lot of these cases with him is that it never actually it doesn't seem like his autopsies or his independent investigations ever actually align with the medical examiner, like the official by the state or whoever the body gets sent to. Whatever they decide was the cause of the death, his is always contradicting to it, to what seems like support another side to push the narrative that what they're saying happened actually happened. Now, whether that actually happened or not, and he's actually being honest, again, that's up for debate. I think to say that it's not would be a little um disingenuous. I think it's totally up for debate. I think it's totally up for debate. I think I'd like to know why does that always seem to be the case? It seems a little weird. And now we find him now involved in Mr. E's case as well. And so having him be involved in this autopsy at all is weird in and of itself. But I say all of that to say that when the Webb is saying that his autopsy concluded that it was a homicide due to the neck injuries and that it would be inconsistent with suicide. Well, the medical examiner, Barbara's office, ended up coming out that they're going to stick by their autopsy, that they believe it's accurate, and that the injuries that were there, which was like a snapped thyroid and all kinds of other things, like it was like snapped, like his neck was snapped. Which I would agree is actually seems a little rough for a hanging suicide in your gosh, I said the S word. Probably gonna have to edit that out. Definitely gonna have to edit that out. I would agree that it definitely does seem a little much for the cause of death. But at the same time, there's so many questions around it. So I guess I can't say for sure. But I can say it's a little weird. It is a little weird. I will say that. One part of me is saying, though, that's assuming that's even his neck. Because again, we have this time lapse in between the time he's no longer with us and the time that he is now at the medical examiner. So for all we know, could have been swapped out. We don't know. And I know that there's going to be people that are like, well, what makes you think something like that would happen? Well, we'll get into that later on, maybe even another episode. For now, we're going to start here. So, anyway, the coordination pattern, the email chain reveals a coordinated effort. So, number one, we have Epstein's. You guys, this is going to be the death of me. This is going to be. Mr. E's legal team requested a delay in the autopsy to secure a private pathologist. Number two, Dr. Graham accommodated this request, delaying the autopsy. Dr. Baden was lined up as a private pathologist. And number four, this coordination happened within hours of Mr. E's death. Literally within hours. Like literally, he was gone, and then all of a sudden, they're like, "Yep, we're doing autopsy. Hey, we have a private one, and I already have them picked out." Within hours. Now I don't know about you guys, but if my brother passed away, and even like unexpectedly, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we sent him off to the medical examiner. They're going to do an autopsy." I might be a little naive, and I think maybe that comes into play as far as that, because I've never had a family member get taken out or take themselves out. So I guess I might be a little naive in this part, but I also feel like in the grieving process, unless you're Erica Kirk, for example, but if you're literally anyone else, your mind is probably all over the place. Okay. I don't know that I would be able to, like, within hours, literal hours, maybe like by the end of the day, maybe the next day, maybe not even really. There's a lot of times for me where I'm so distraught in an event like that, I think about it until like even way later when the fog is cleared, that I'm like, oh, you know what I could have did? I should have did this differently. Now, it is possible that there's other people in their circle that maybe aren't grieving because it wasn't their family member, and they just so happen to have some insight into that kind of stuff. And it's not far-fetched to think that they wouldn't have someone like that in their circle. I mean, they literally had everyone in their circle. They had private everything. Okay. They had all kinds of people they knew. So it is possible that somebody could have been like, hey, I think you should hire a private investigator. I know somebody, and that could have happened. So that is possible. But with that being said, it's still a little weird that within literal hours that was already decided. It's almost as if that was pre-planned, you know? Like you get a phone call. Imagine this. We'll use this. Hello? Oh, no, what? You found him where? Is he okay? What's good? Are you sure? Okay, well, yeah, I'll book a flight. I'll get down. Yeah, you're gonna do the auto. Okay. Yes, please do, because I don't know something's probably wrong, that he wouldn't do something like that. Oh my gosh, this is horrible. Are you sure? Well, how did this happen? How could you let this happen? It's under investigation. Okay. All right. Okay. Yep. All right. I thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Please keep me updated. I will start making arrangements. Thank you. And then you're broken. You're broken because your brother's gone. And it probably hasn't even fully like sunk in yet. You're probably like in shock. You're probably going through the grief symptoms. Again, unless you're Erica Kirk, you're probably in denial. And then once that's over, you might be angry. Like, why? It's your fault. You might be like mad at these people for letting that happen. And then you might, frantically, you start jumping, you start trying to get your mind off of it. That's like the body's coping mechanism. You're like, I gotta get down there. So you are getting on a flight, you're booking flights, you are getting there. Because I believe he was in Florida at the time. Okay, and then I think we did look too in the files, and we saw that it was confirmed that they confirmed with him that he had confirmed that they showed him a photo. They showed him a photo. It's like he was planning on being there anyway. So I don't know why it had to be confirmed so quickly. Like, why did it have to be so quick if he was going to fly there with his medical examiner? Because one of the requirements that Dr. Graham had, he's like, I'm going to make an exception for you to have your private person view the autopsy as we perform it. But the requirements are that you need to be here by 9 a.m. and you have to provide a DNA sample. That's what they told him. That's what Dr. Graham told Dr. Baden. So they were there by 9 a.m. per the rules. So I don't know. That's prior to even that, literally within, like it says right here, within a few hours, they were already determining who was going to be their private medical examiner. It seems a little weird. It seems a little weird to me. I don't know that I would be able to have, and maybe I don't know Mr. E's brother. Okay. Maybe he very well just was like, immediately, maybe that's what happened when he got into the anger part of the grief. He was like, immediately, I don't trust these people. I'm getting my own private investigator. And he like went on Google and he was like, who's the best one? Who's the best one? And maybe Mr. Baden showed up. I don't know. It says it doesn't show Dr. Graham's promotion timeline to chief medical examiner. Again, this is because it doesn't have access to like outside information other than the files. So we'll just get past that part because it doesn't matter. So here I said, I also noticed that some reports show that Director Wiggins took at Mr. E, almost did it, Mr. E's body at the hospital, but the timelines don't match up with the check-in time at the medical examiner facility. And then all this stuff you see here, like I'm not skipping past important information. I'm scrolling down because it's literally just saying that it's looking up the information. So it's like, let me check the specific email documents mentioning Wiggins. And then it like says looking up document and it tells specifically what document. So I'm just scrolling to like the answer basically. So timeline discrepancies in Epstein's body transport. It says, you've identified a critical issue. Based on the documents, I can see several timeline inconsistencies that warrant investigation. Let me tell you guys, I read that line and I almost cried. I read that line and I was like, crazy. Oh man, the vindication. So, for good measure, let's read it again. You've identified a critical issue. Based on the documents, I can see several timeline inconsistencies that warrant investigation. Well, gee, I wonder whose job that is. Critical discrepancy. The hospital release time was 12:15 p.m. Okay. The medical examiner check-in time was 3:06 p.m. That time gap is 2 hours and 51 minutes. What happened during those 2 hours and 51 minutes? Even the Webb is like, what happened during that time? The documents show, let's see what the documents show. Number one, the transport time. Medical examiner staff departed the hospital at 12:57 p.m. The travel distance from New York Presbyterian Hospital to the medical examiner at 521st Avenue is approximately 2.5 miles, which would be a 10 to 15 minute drive. That's even closer than I gave him a 5-minute extra time. I said 20 minutes, but Webb isn't as gracious. Webb is on it. Webb is like, no. It's not even 20 minutes. It's 10 to 15 minutes. Thank you, Webb, for clarifying. expected arrival between 1:10 and 1:15 p.m. So that's when you would expect them. The actual check-in time was 3:06 p.m., which is nearly 2 hours later than expected. Incomplete documentation, missing transport logs, custody chain gaps. This seems to be a common theme throughout the entirety of this story. I mean, we have missing documentation with the guards. They were apparently falsifying records at they weren't checking on him, and they didn't, and then they put that they were, or there's missing log information, or they wrote down a note but then didn't say who they were. There's a lot of gaps in missing information, and obviously that's intentional. I'm just going to come right out and say it. I know some people are like, oh, well, we could guess. No. I think it's pretty obvious that that's intentional at this point, because it is constant. It's constant. It's constant throughout his stay there. It's constant throughout the night that it had happened. There's literally no documentation or anything that would give us any sort of idea as to what happened. And obviously that's intentional, because clearly they don't want us to know what happened, right? And then, of course, leading on even into the autopsy, you have very weird gaps and no documentation. It's just throughout the entirety of the thing, there is missing documentation. Something went wrong. Like the entire time, nothing could have gone right. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've had some bad days. I've had some bad weeks where literally nothing can go right. Nothing. Everything goes wrong. Like, it's just so bad. But this isn't just one person having a bad day or a bad week. This is multiple people, and professionals, mind you. Okay, how easy do you think it is to go get a job at the FBI? I mean, considering on the people that they've hired lately, I often wonder, is it really that hard to get into the FBI? Because it doesn't seem like it. Just saying. But truthfully, I'm sure you have to have some sort of a degree. I'm sure you have to have some type of experience. You need to be credible to some degree. You need to have some stripes, right? To be a lieutenant, to be a warden, to be a FBI agent, to be a medical examiner, to be a private investigator. All of these roles are not roles that you simply just roll out of bed, fill out an application, and walk right in the next day. Sorry. Like, that's not how that works. It's not McDonald's. No shade to people that work at McDonald's. It's not an easy job. But I'm just saying, you mean to tell me that multiple professional, high ranking individuals just didn't have the documentation, couldn't provide the documentation, dropped the ball, had a bad day, all of them? All at the same time? Even the cameras dropped the ball. The cameras had a bad day and were out. They're never out. But that day, I don't know, must have been something in the water. Maybe it was a full moon. Anyway, let's go back. No records exist showing the transport vehicle logs, the OCME receiving documentation with exact arrival time, the chain of custody signatures for the 2+ hour period. I mean, he's just missing. We don't know what's going on. Like I said, I think they were having a party. I think they were having a blast.
All right, Dr. Graham will approve this. Just wait until Ghislaine sees this. Let's get him to the island.
I'm in the days that bottom is waving at me like, damn it, I know you. You run the show like a gun out of holster. Tell me whatever and I'll be your gopher. You spin my head right round when you go down, You spin my head right round when you go down.
Obviously, I'm joking. But what else could they be doing? Maybe sneaking him off back to his island? Maybe playing bingo? Tic-tac-toe? Rock, paper, scissors? 99 bottles of beer on the wall. What were they doing? Darts? I don't know. The options are endless. Security camera timestamps from OCME facility. Of course, there's no security camera timestamps. So even so you mean to tell me that even the security cameras at the medical examiner, so not only were the cameras at the prison having a bad day, apparently a few miles down the road, even the medical examiner office, their cameras were having a bad day too. We should check the local banks in the area and see if theirs were working just fine. I bet they were. I bet they were. Apparently from FBI interviews revealing the decoy operation. I didn't even know they had a decoy operation. They had a decoy operation. Did you know they had a decoy operation? If you did, tell me you did in the comments below, because I want to know how many people knew this. I certainly did not know this. A male medical examiner official called to coordinate arrival at the loading dock with a black vehicle. Correctional officers created a decoy body using boxes and sheets placed in a white medical examiner vehicle to mislead the press. So it's just very weird. It says right here, even the Webb agrees with me, what's deeply troubling, the documents show a coordinated effort to deceive the media about Mr. E's body transport, which created a 2+ hour custody gap that's poorly documented. When combined with Dr. Graham's accommodations for the private pathologist, this paints a picture of special handling for Mr. E's case that deviated from standard procedures and created documentation gaps at critical junctures. The investigative question becomes, were these deviations routine for high-profile cases or specific to Mr. E's case? And if specific to Mr. E, then why? That's the ultimate question, isn't it? And here's another thing. They didn't even draw labs. They didn't even try. They didn't give them any they were doing it on the way there. They were definitely trying to give them like epinephrine and stuff on the way there. But usually, and if I'm wrong on this, let me know in the comments, but it's my understanding that when somebody is in like a cardiac arrest situation or is potentially not going to make it, usually what ends up happening is they draw labs because they're trying to see if there's anything in the blood work that could be causing it, or it's something they can give you to try and reverse it. Or also too, in the event that you actually end up passing away, then they have something to go based off of, because then they can test it and see if there's what was potentially the cause. But they didn't even do that. It was almost like it kind of reminds me of like the whole Brian Harpole thing with the Charlie Kirk case. Kind of they're not related, but they kind of rhyme, if that makes sense. So like with Charlie Kirk, he had a whole tour set up. He had like dates out, like he was booked out for weeks, for months. And his team, or at least people on his team, didn't even have their flights. Like they were expecting to be getting on a plane like the next day. They had a place to go like the very next day. Either the very next day or the day after, or something like that. And they didn't have their flights booked in advance. You wouldn't have your flights booked in advance if you knew you weren't going. Otherwise, you would have assumed that you were going. So you would have had your flight booked in advance because you need to go. You need to make sure you're getting there. You don't need to make sure you're getting there if you know you're not getting there. You know what I mean? Doesn't make sense. Why would you waste your time booking a flight that you know you're not going to get on? Same thing with the doctor. Why would you waste your time drawing labs if you know it doesn't matter? If you know that the person's not actually who they say they are, or that it's a big giant cover. I mean, and then here's the other thing too, is we don't even know what happened inside the hospital room. We don't really know a whole lot about Dr. DeHare yet. We'll get into that. I will say that he seems to find himself in very critical situations all the time. It's very similar to the doctor, gosh, what is his name? Now I'm blanking on his name. Dr. Baden. There we go. Back to what I was saying. So Dr. DeHare is very similar to Dr. Baden in the sense that they always seem to find themselves in these very critical situations. Dr. DeHare was involved, well, not involved, well, that I'm aware of or can prove, but he was the doctor that was at one of the main hospitals during 9/11. And the interesting thing about him is it's not necessarily that he was there during 9/11, which is interesting, yes. But what's interesting is that ever since that day, he has basically made it his entire identity. It is his calling in life almost. Like he has written book after book about it. He's done interview after interview about it. He has article after article. I mean, it's like all he talks about. If you Google his name, Dr. DeHare, it's just 9/11 doctor, 9/11 doctor. And he keeps repeating the same story over and over about what happened on that day and how it affected him and all of these things and how it affected people and what they, he just gives this very like heroic story over and over and over and over. What I haven't noticed though is that he's ever, at least that I've seen or have been able to find, I have not seen him mention that he was the doctor who pronounced Mr. E's deceasement or death. Not once. It's like he has removed himself far away from that one. And if he was talking about his experience in COVID, that was a whole thing. Articles about that, the AIDS epidemic. There's all these weird, like, well, not weird, but like very high case, like breaking news, history making, government involved things, whether it be military, war, like he was a doctor during a war, and then he was sent to, then he came to New York, and he was this doctor during 9/11, and then he was doing interviews and going out and talking when it was COVID, and then the AIDS, back in the 80s, and the AIDS epidemic, when that was, I think it was in the 80s. And what I find to be a little compelling is that you don't really see anyone else doing that. I mean, and I could be wrong. Maybe it's just I'm not looking at other doctors. I'm focusing on this doctor because of the fact that he's involved in this case, which he refuses to mention. It's like that. He has no problem telling you that he was a doctor on 9/11. He'll talk your ear off about that. But there is has zero articles talking about how crazy of a situation it was when he was dealing with Mr. E. Okay. That now he's removed himself from that. He actually retired shortly after. So he was like, nope, I'm not even a doctor anymore. Since that, we're done. So yeah, I just find it interesting. We have Dr. DeHare, who's involved in every single critical medical problem. And then we have Dr. Baden, who's involved in every single controversial medical examiner case or autopsy. They just so happen to find themselves in these situations. It's again back with the bad day thing. Like, yeah, I've had a bad day, but to have a bad day multiple times, to find yourself in these situations multiple times, it seems like it's not random. It seems like it's not coincidence. Like, you mean to tell me that you're coincidentally finding yourselves in these scenarios and making yourself famous off of being a doctor during these times? Like, how have you promoted yourself into this type of a role? It's almost as if you're like a celebrity doctor. Like, okay, great, you were a doctor on 9/11. You weren't the only doctor on 9/11. There was several other doctors, and I don't hear them talking about it. Okay, you want to know who else worked in healthcare during COVID? I did. I worked in healthcare during COVID. And I do not make it my life's mission. It's not my entire personality to mention that everywhere I go, or even go on a news podcast or wherever and talk about how it has affected me and other people, and talk about the vaccine and try to tell people my opinion about it. Like, no, I don't do that. If somebody asks or if it comes up in conversation, yeah, of course. Okay, cool. Let's have a conversation about it. I'll tell you what it was like. It was crazy. It was. It was a crazy time for everybody, not just healthcare workers. But it's not my entire identity, and I don't want it to be either. But for this person, whenever there is some sort of huge event that is highly publicized, he seems to be a public public doctor speaker on the matter. It's like he's the government's doctor, the media's doctor. So again, I could be wrong. This is just my opinion based off of my observation. So back to what I was saying though, back to this, the high profile case handling, special protocols that aren't fully documented. Yeah, well, knowing what we know about Dr. DeHare and knowing what we know about Dr. Baden and Dr. Graham, I would like to know, exactly what happened once Mr. E got into the care of Dr. DeHare. What happened within the 10 minutes that it took to say, okay, definitively, we are now pronouncing Mr. E dead. We're not going to go to labs. We're not going to try to figure out. We're not even going to try to help. He's gone. 10 minutes. God, I pray that if I ever find myself in cardiac arrest or some sort of situation, that when I finally get to the hospital to get help, that it takes a little bit more than 10 minutes to try and help me. I wonder if that was Dr. DeHare's mom or if that was Dr. DeHare's daughter or wife or friend or neighbor or anyone, really, and even a stranger. I wonder if he would spend more than 10 minutes trying to help them before pronouncing them deceased. Or is that, again, just like another special circumstance because it's Mr. E? Those are the questions that we have. Me and Webb, apparently. And why? If that's a special circumstance for Mr. E, then why? That's all we want to know. We just want to know why. And I want to know what happened. And then I want to know what happened in the time we were pronounced deceased and then finally end up at the medical examiner office. What was going on there? Why did it take so long? Why did it take so long, and who dropped the ball on that? Yet another ball. Okay. What's most concerning about the decoy operation? The premeditation. The male OCME official had a plan ready to deceive the media. Yeah, the premeditation had a plan. Again, just like the whole within hours of Mr. E or Mr. E being gone or whatever, within hours, his brother was like, yep, I already know who I'm calling to come investigate. They're like, oh, we better get a van, we better have a decoy. It's like they were prepared for that. Okay. It's like they were prepared to have a situation like this. Webb says, you've identified a critical 7.5-hour gap that needs investigation. You hear that, Kash Patel? Did you hear that? Webb says that there's a 7.5-hour gap that needs investigation. Just letting you know. Okay. Or don't. I'm sure the Dow is over 50,000, so I think it should be fine then. Yeah, it should be fine. We're good. Hospital timeline. Let's take a look here. So, this is our official timeline. 6:33 in the morning. Epstein's found unresponsive in his cell. 6:45. EMS arrives. 7:10. EMS leaves. Departed for the hospital with supposedly Mr. E. All right, guys, so I looked it up, and to my surprise, the hospital is actually less than a mile away from the prison. Less than a mile. It's 0.7 of a mile. And so it says, Google Maps says anyway, that it takes about 5 minutes to get there by car. I'm sure it's probably even faster by ambulance, considering they don't even have to wait for traffic lights. They don't have to, nothing. They literally put on their week and they are gone. So I would say it was probably less than 5 minutes to get there. So we have it reported that or recorded rather, that the EMS departed at 7:10, but they arrived at the hospital at 7:25. That's what it says. The arrival time was 7:25. That's 15 minutes. That is 15 minutes to drive less than a mile. That should only take 5 minutes according to Google Maps. So here we now have another timeline discrepancy. Because why did it take you 10 extra minutes to get there? Especially as an ambulance. If you were driving a regular vehicle, that would be one thing. That would be like, okay, well, maybe there was, traffic, or you just, you had to stop at the lights. There was a lot of things, maybe. But even then, I really don't think that it would take that much longer. So again, it's just there's these little snippets of time that are unaccounted for and undocumented and don't make sense. So now we have 10 minutes that we don't know what was going on. We do know that they were providing decoys and whatever, but I don't think that you would be, instead of trying to get someone help, you'd be more worried about the press. So you're trying to like get a decoy and all of that or whatever. Like, you're really going to put someone's life on hold so that you can try to deviate from the press? I don't think so. Just get to the hospital. The hospital has security. If press is being that pressing, if they're being over dramatic, if they're coming into the building and being pushy or whatever, or violating laws, then yeah, of course, they have security there. You don't have to do that. And we all know that. I mean, I'm just saying this because it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, it's crazy. And it's not rush. It's a Saturday. So it's not like it's busy. I mean, again, it is downtown New York. So, and I've never been there, so I guess I can't speak to it, but I'm looking on Google Maps right now and it's telling me, at least at what time it is right now, it's a different time. So maybe I'll check again this coming Saturday just to see what it would be on a Saturday morning at 7:10 in the morning. See if the time changes from 5 minutes to 15 minutes. Maybe. I could imagine on like a Monday morning. Yeah, for sure. It might even add like 30 minutes in downtown New York, for all I know. I would assume so. It's always been rumored that it's extremely busy. But it's less than a mile away and you're in an ambulance. So, yeah, I don't know. Weird. Let's see. So yeah, so we're leaving the hospital then. Well, we're arriving to the hospital at 7:25. We're pronounced dead at 7:36. And then at 12:15 p.m. is when the body is released to the medical examiner for autopsy, which again, it's kind of strange because you're pronounced deceased at he was pronounced deceased at 7:36 in the morning. It wasn't until 12:15 in the afternoon that they finally released his body to the medical examiner. And we do know that Dr. Graham was delaying things and all of that, but I mean, it doesn't mean that the body can't be transported just because you're delaying the actual autopsy. The body doesn't need to sit at the hospital for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, however long. Like, it just, that's not necessary. So, let's see. So perfect. So Webb documents it perfectly, and this is why I like this program. You mean to tell me that this is such a high profile case that you need to go and plan a decoy and you need to do this and that, and there's like so much you're pulling all the stops to be weird after he's finally passed away from supposedly not paying attention to him or whatever. Okay. But he's not high profile enough to get him on over to the medical examiner after an hour. And that's being generous. Like, as soon as someone's pronounced deceased, especially since it's not like the medical examiner's far. It's literally 10, 15 minutes down the road. Come get him, put him in the fridge. What's going on? 7.5 hours. What? I want to know. I need to know what was going on for 7.5 hours. 7.5 hours is a lot of time to be able to get somebody from point A to point B. Don't you just love the web? Don't you just look, it answers some of our questions for us. For a high profile case with homicide suspicions, this extended timeline with incomplete documentation is highly irregular. Yeah, I would agree. Now, why would they do that? So, I don't know, guys. I'm just showing you the pieces of the puzzle. You put together whatever puzzle you think fits the pieces I gave you. And I promise you it's going to start to paint a more understandable picture. With everything we know now about the doctors, the timelines, the missing information, and the information that I've found to kind of fill the gaps of missing information that they try to erase, it is my opinion that Mr. E is still alive. Yeah.
Think about this, guys. If it was a murder, if it was somebody coming after him and attacking him and taking him out because of negligence at the prison or balls being dropped at the prison, whatever, then you would only see the inconsistencies and the time gaps and the issues at the prison. You would just see that it would be like, oh, okay, well, their reports are all messed up and whatever, but everybody else that was involved or everybody else that has been involved either prior to the situation and or after, whether it be the FBI or the medical examiner office or even the people at the hospital or even EMS for that matter. But the fact that it's a mess up after mess up after mess up from every single entity that was involved in one way or another. And the fact that they clearly have the idea of having a decoy in their mind. So it's not out of the realm to assume that if they can plan a decoy for that, they can certainly plan a decoy for something else. And it would be foolish to think otherwise. So keep that in mind, folks. All right, friends, that will do it for this episode. If you liked the video, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps me continue making more videos like this one. See you next time. Have a good week.